Alright, before I get started, be sure to check out the description for timestamps of everything I'm about to talk about. You can jump straight to whatever part of the video you want to see. I'm giving a big breakdown of a lot of different things before you see the actual build, so if that's all you're here for, jump over to this time. Alright, let's get started. So, you haven't played the game for 3 months and now you're thinking about coming back. Now is probably the best time to try it out. The medic bag has sucked for months at this point, and they finally released 2 patches to bring it back. So we are finally medic back. Mostly. I'm posting this video before the update comes out to hopefully beat some of the Starbreeze partners to the punch on this one, for once in my life. I'm pretty confident this is how everything is going to look during the patch, since the devs have been releasing dev blogs, and I think they even gave us the official patch notes basically like a day or two ago. If something small is different, I'll let you know in the description. If there's anything major different, you won't even be seeing this video because there'll be a different one up. Anyway, their way of fixing the medic bag is the adrenaline mechanic added in Update 5. As well, they're making a couple skill changes, so we'll talk about that. So for this patch, they've added the entire Fortitude skill line, and I'll go into detail on what everything does a little bit later. They've also added 7 more skill points into the game, so when you start the game up, you're going to have more skill points than when you left it. I've got a chart right here showing the number of skill points you'll have depending on your level. I've taken all of this into consideration, and I believe this build is going to require about 22 or 23 skill points to be really efficient. That means you'll need to be level 77 or 83 respectively. I don't really recommend less than that, but we can ditch a couple skills that you may or may not want to have, so we'll say the required minimum is going to be level 61 to get this build off the ground. That means you'll have 20 skill points. I ran a poll on my Twitter, and then they shortly after announced that the patch was coming out tomorrow, so now I'm rushing to get this video out. The 24-hour news cycle is a bastard, but it seems like a good chunk of you guys should hopefully be able to put this build together. Now for a quick frame of reference, it's currently March 26th at the time of recording this video. We're just about on Update 5, which is apparently coming out tomorrow. And just to clarify that, yes, this video is being recorded and edited before the release of the update. However, with all the blog posts and stuff we've gotten, I think this build is pretty solid and pretty simple. If anything minor's changed, check the description. If anything major has changed, you won't see this video. Let's get started. And by let's get started, I mean, let's talk about some things before I show you the actual build, which is at this time. One thing I like to go over is playstyle tips, because not all builds should play the same. Unless you're a Payday 3 player, then they all play the same. But there's a couple things I want you to focus on for this build. Just like my previous medic bag video, I want you to pick up everyone that goes down. This benefits you and them as well. You're going to be the fastest person on the map, so you're going to rush objectives. This build should make you pretty unkillable for the most part, so it should be very easy to rush objectives. Before you ask, no. We're not taking adaptive armor. Adaptive armor will hinder this build for a few reasons, and I'll detail it in the actual build. What you're going to want to do is take the lightest armor you're comfortable with. I recommend starting with 2-plate armor because it's got a good regen time, and it'll get you used to playing with lower armor. When you're really good at this build, take the single-plate vest, otherwise known as the standard lining. You can take adaptive armor if you really want to, if that's what's going to change the game for you, but it will hinder you and you won't be able to use adrenaline to its full potential. It'll probably still be fine, but for this build, I'm going to go with a single plate armor in mind. As well, I'm going to leave a few skill points open for you. I want you to change your offensive skills depending on what weapon you're taking. If you like the new R900, which is the sniper that has been recently buffed in the patch before this one, use the sharpshooter stuff. I really recommend trying the sniper, by the way, if you're just coming back. It's really fun now. If you're trying out the new Mosconi, which has also been buffed and is very good, you can try to take more offensive skills like the Enforcer tree allows, or maybe ammo funnels so you never run out of ammo. Moving on from playstyle, let's talk about adrenaline. Adrenaline is the new big mechanic for patch 5. Adrenaline is an overheal mechanic. It's given by all medic bags and first aid kits, so all you need to know is any medical supplies can overheal you. You want to try to overheal if you're intending to run through a lot of cops or absorb a lot of damage at once. This is why we want to rush objectives with it. For some weird reason, currently it's taken before your armor is taken, and for that reason I think you're going to be pretty unkillable and able to rush objectives very well with it. It runs out slowly over time. You can pause this with certain abilities such as taking a first aid kit, or every time you take damage, it slows down the timer by a couple seconds. So you want to be taking constant but not massive damage. As well in this build, having adrenaline will boost all of the other 3 major buffs you get from skills. Edge, Grit, and Rush will be boosted by Pain Ebola, which is a skill in the adrenaline tree. Speaking of rushing, gritting, and edging, I just said that in a video. Why did I just say that in a video? Let's talk about the ways you're going to get edge, grit, and rush. Because I think grit is going to be the most important thing on this build, let's go over that first. We're going to take Medic Aced. That means reviving people will give you grit, and you'll take 40% less damage while reviving those people. This will help guarantee that your friends get off the ground. Or the bots. This also synergizes with the Fortitude skill line, which increases the grit effectiveness, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Your major way to get grit in this build is going to be with the first skill in the Fortitude skill line. At base, it increases your max health by 50, but also every time you overheal, you're going to gain or refresh grit, which means you're going to have grit all the time when you're overhealing. That's pretty much it for grit. Remember, our goals should be pretty unkillable, so having grit often is important, which means overhealing often is important. If you don't have adrenaline up, you want to try to get some adrenaline. Quickly glancing over edge, you can get edge out of the sharpshooter or the mower tree depending on what kind of weapons you're using, but the main way I want to get it is through the escapist tree. If you ace the first one in the escapist tree, you can slide to get edge after you have rush. So you run for 3 seconds to get rush, then slide to get edge. And then other ways to get rush, you can take code blue in the medic tree if you have enough skill points, but we might be omitting that one depending on your level. And finally, a more recent skill line, we have the transporter skill line. You're going to want to take transporter ace if you can, that way you get rush and grit. But this really might not be necessary, since every time you overheal you'll get grit. You're going to be taking transporter skills anyway, so I figured one more point couldn't hurt if you've got the points to spare, but probably don't do this one right away. Now, the main reason we want edge, grit, and rush, depending on how you want to play, is when we have Pain Symbolia, when you have that one skill I can't pronounce from the Fortitude skill line, all of your edge, grit, and rush buffs are doubled, and you take 10% less adrenaline damage, which means grit effectively gives you 30% damage reduction instead. Edge means you can kill harder with 20% more damage, and rush means you can run even faster with 20% more movement speed. So having any of these is important depending on your playstyle. You want to kill a lot? Get some more edge in your build. You want to run fast and rush objectives, which is usually the main point of this build? Get a lot of rush in your build. You want to outlast a lot of damage? Grit. Alright, for this next bit we're going to go through the skill lines one by one, top to bottom. Here's an example build with some good weapons that I like to use. Remember that we have the standard lining because we want to have as many downs as possible. I took the AK because it's pretty much the meta weapon right now, but you can use whatever you'd like I said. And then I just took a random secondary weapon because I don't usually use them that much. Alright, getting into the skill lines here. This here is the most basic you want to get with your skills. This is what it would look like if you were about level 61, 66. So I'm going to flash the trees individually up here because I don't have the updated version of the game yet, and I'm going to take some from the Elizabeth and Mio stream we got. On the stream they showcased all kinds of cool stuff like the new Fortitude skill line and the placement of all the skills. So we'll be referring to that. Your core skills for this build that you want to have, this is the bare necessities that you want. In the medic skill line, we're going to take medic aced. This means you'll revive teammates faster and you'll get grit every time you revive them. This also means you'll take 40% less damage while reviving your teammates. We're going to take steady hands for an additional heal off of every medic bag hit for you and your team. This will be necessary to generate more adrenaline. We're going to take extra charge. I mentioned this in my last video. Anytime you have a deployable that you're centering the build around, take the extra charge equivalent to get 2 more charges. Combat medic is probably the most important skill in this line when paired with medic aced. You'll get grit when you begin reviving a teammate, and with combat medic, by having grit, you and the teammate will have 5 seconds of invulnerability when getting up. That means you and your teammate have plenty of time to get to cover and renegotiate your resources, or figure out what the heck's going on, how did we get into this situation in the first place. We're going to skip code blue for now, but it'll be coming up later. We're going to take triage as well. This is just an increase in healing for every single buff you have, whether it's edge, grit, rush, all 3, just 2 of them, whatever the combination. You'll get 15% more healing for each one that you have. This means you'll get more adrenaline every time you heal. Next up, we're going to take the new tank mastery. This used to be disengage, which allowed you to disengage from a taser or a cloaker kick 1 time during the heist. They also buffed it last patch to let you run through nader gas. However, they've moved disengage to a different spot. Now we have this new tank skill called Clean Slate. With Clean Slate, you can interact with an armor repair kit while you have no armor to restore your first armor chunk. This realistically gives you an infinite way to gain more armor during the heist. Theoretically, you should always have 1 plate of armor now. Moving down to the escapist tree, it looks a little different than you remember, but it's pretty much the same thing. We're going to take escapist aced. That means we're going to get rushed by running for 3 seconds, and when we slide, we'll turn it into edge. This is a good way to keep both of those buffs alive, which partners well with triage. Also in the escapist tree here, we're going to take move and cover. You can use this to climb over something while you have edge to turn it into grit if you need to. Having grit means you're going to take significantly less damage while you have adrenaline. Personally, I also like to throw swift into these builds just to get 10% more movement speed. This is just a flat 10% increase, so you benefit off of it all the time. No rush required. I believe this is where disengage is going now. Yes, disengage should be here instead now. Swift has been moved to be the 5th skill in the escapist tree. We're going to take manipulator aced now. Manipulator basic is pretty boring, you can tie hostages 50% faster. But what we really want to benefit off of is the aced version of manipulator. Whenever you trade a hostage, you get an additional resource. That means more first aid kits on the ground for you to heal off of and get adrenaline off of. As well, you can get those armor kits down on the ground and use Clean Slate to get your armor back if you're out of it. We're not going to put any more points in a negotiator for now since this is the basic level of the build, but we're going to be revisiting a lot of this tree in a minute. And finally, we have transporter. We're going to take transporter basic for right now just so we gain rush anytime we pick up a bag. The more important part here is that we're unlocking the ability to take deep pockets. Deep pockets means you now have 2 medic bags of 12 charges, if we include the fortitude skills we're about to talk about. That means you've got a lot of ways to get adrenaline, and you can even place your medic bag in 2 different spots, which is very helpful. Consider placing one on one end of the map and one on the other end of the map. That way traversal between them is incredibly easy. You can take from your medic bag and then run across the map with adrenaline. Speaking of adrenaline, let's talk about what it actually is in the skill line. I'm going to be using the visuals from the stream that Elizabeth and Mio did, so this isn't my footage, it's from the official Payday stream, just letting you know. The goal of the Fortitude skill line is to buff your survivability quite a bit. I wouldn't really budge on any of these if you can help it, but you can change the build however you want. So in the Fortitude skill line, we're going to take the base version and the ace version of the first skill. This increases your max health by 50, and whenever you heal up and get adrenaline, you'll get grit as well. We're also going to ace it, which means your maximum number of downs is going to go up by 1. It also increases your bleed out timer by 50%. That means you've got 45 seconds on the ground. We're going to take Stockpile. I mentioned earlier that you can have 12 total charges off of your medic bag. That's from Stockpile here. This is the Mastery skill, which means you can take this on any build you want, which means even if you're taking an armor build, ammo build for some reason, or a medic bag build in this case, you'll have the maximum number of charges in the game, and it only adds 1 more skill point to your build. A little bit of a side note, these 2 charges are added before Deep Pockets from Transporter, so 12 is the new maximum number you can carry, 6 in each bag. Truthfully, because you have so few skill points at level 61, we're not going to take Health Siphon, but we'll come back to it in a minute. We will be taking Unyielding. Unyielding increases your maximum health by 15% for every down that you have. Now, in case you didn't see in the last patch, medic bags heal 1 down as it is. That's why we're not going to take the Medic Mastery in this build. Basically, if you go down once, you're going to want to hit the medic bag at least 1 time. Then you can overheal with first aid kits if you want to, or go for a big overheal with the medic bag. Why do they make some of these words so hard? Supraphysiological. We're going to take this skill that I'm not going to say again because it's too difficult. What this one does is you gain 10% additional adrenaline for every down that you have. This is why you want to keep your down counter as high as you can, and that's why we take the single plate vest. Editor's note, the less plates you have on a vest, the more downs you have. That's why single plate vest is best for this build and adaptive armor is not as good. More adrenaline means more health, means tanking more damage. Depending on the number of skill points you have left over, we're going to take Walking Tall. This makes your adrenaline degrade 25% slower for every down that you have. If you have any adrenaline at all and you use a first aid kit, it pauses the timer of degradation by 15 seconds. That means you get 15 seconds of your adrenaline bar not dropping at all. We're going to skip Walking Tall if you don't have more than 1 skill point left over, but this is definitely worth taking. Finally, we're going to get down to the really good skill, Pain Symbolia. This one, as long as you have adrenaline and edge, grit, or rush, their benefits are doubled. Now for grit, that makes it realistically about 30%, because you take 10% less damage with adrenaline while you have this skill as well. This is a good skill to take if you're trying to deal a lot of damage with edge, so 20% more damage, or you're trying to rush objectives with grit and rush. Now, with all that being said, let's go over where to put some of those extra skill points to benefit a lot more. It's taken me a full minute to load into the game right now. We're going to quickly go top to bottom now, adding more skill points if you're above level like 66 or whatever. We're going to take Code Blue. That way you get rush anytime somebody goes down, and you revive them faster. You can take Field Surgery if you want. I don't see you going down too much with adrenaline, honestly. We're going to look over to the Tank tree. We're going to take Tank Basic, which will increase your armor regeneration speed. This means you'll save that 1 plate vest a little more, if you're hiding often enough, that is. And then we're going to take Hardy. Hardy is whenever one of your armor chunks breaks, you gain 2 seconds of invulnerability. You do only have the 1 plate vest, but you can get it back with Clean Slate from the Tank Mastery, and you'll get 2 seconds to run away before you start taking actual health damage instead of adrenaline or armor damage. You can throw a point into disengage if you want. I don't think it's really that worth it, so probably put that one in very last. Now a big part here is we're going to put some more points into the manipulator tree. You can go into either one of these first, but we're going to go into menacing and negotiator. Menacing means you'll have an infinite supply of cops to trade between assault waves. You can get 1 down per assault wave per person, which means realistically, that's 4 trades in a full lobby per assault break. Plus, if you're quick, you can trade them and go get another cop while they're retreating and get another trade done. This is just a way to get infinite resources, and I know a lot of you have the issue that there's a limit on the resources you can bring into the heist, which means the heist either ends with a failure or you make it out fast enough. This is a good way to circumvent that. As well as menacing, take negotiator. This gives 1 more resource per trade. That means when you trade a hostage, you'll get 4 resources. So that's 4 first aid kits or 4 armor repair kits, which now, with Clean Slate, is 4 entire armor plates. I can't stress enough how important taking these is. Trading is very, very strong now on a medic build. To make it even stronger, we take Silver Tongue. This means anytime you trade a law enforcer, you get an additional first aid kit or armor repair kit. That's 5 per law enforcer traded. So what you should consider doing is not killing law enforcers when the heist begins and get them all down as fast as you can. There's no cap on the beat cops at the beginning of the heist, which means on heists like Touch the Sky, you can get about 6 law enforcers down if your team is really working on it. I just realized that's like 30 supplies total. If there's 6 law enforcers, you get them all down and you get 5 per law enforcer. Oh my god! Finally, you can consider taking Powerlifter from the transporter tree to carry 2 bags. And you can take Walking Tall and Health Siphon if you'd really like to. Health Siphon's good if your teammates are healing off of your medic bags, so if you want to be the carry while you're helping support them, Health Siphon can be very good. You won't be able to eat as many of your medic supplies, but when they heal, you'll at least get some of the heals as well. And I think that's it. If there's anything different about the patch when it comes out tomorrow, I'll make sure to change the video, or write down in the description if it's something minor. So you're either not going to see this video at all, or you can just check the description, and there'll be something minor changed. But that should be it. I'm going to be going live as soon as I wake up and have a lovely breakfast with my lovely wife the day of the patch. So check me out over on Twitch, that'll be in the description as well. We're shooting for 3,000 followers, so I'd really like it if you came by and dropped a follow. It's free. If you like this video, give it a like. I really appreciate it. Share it to your friends if you want to show off a cool medic adrenaline build. I really do think this is going to be the best adrenaline build possible. And while it doesn't use the new adaptive armor, you can always substitute it in if you'd really like to. I'm sure it'll go well with this build. All that being said, this build is so strong, Frieza doesn't stand a chance against it.